Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It's wonderful to see you. We're going to get started. We're going to sing Hine Matov. Hine Matov u'manayim Shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim Shevet achim gam yachad.
Oh, wow. Here we are. The room is filling up. Folks being together, the children being here on First Friday, the parents being here, bringing their children on First Friday. Woo, those of you on Zoom, welcome as well.
So good to see you all.
So you get to see the side view of folks in the congregation. So let us know about continue to give us feedback about the way technology is working in these hybrid days, and we will continue to experiment. So speaking of experimenting, we wanted to do something different this First Friday. We thought it would be wonderful to invite the children up, not just for Kiddush later on, but also for candle lighting. So if you are under 50, there we go. Under, how about 25 and under, 18 and under, what do we got here? Those of you who are in OSRS, why don't you come on up and we can light some candles here. Page 5.
Come on over here.
We're actually going to be candle lighting over here.
We actually have something for you that we're going to ask you to help with. So come on around, Rabbi Daria. Gather around.
Okay, will you take this first shamash?
Gather around. All the actions over here at the table, guys.
Okay, and you can light that.
Come on over.
Just light these 2 candles. There we go. We can do this upright. There we go. So then we'll be able to, just like with Hanukkah, so you can light a candle and then pass the shamash to somebody else. Oopsie, and you're going to want to keep the tail end of the candle down as much as you can, and then that should help a little bit. It is a little awkward. You can lift up this too if you need to.
When they're all lit, we're going to wave the light into ourselves.
Good.
And
Keep
then
it
we'll look
upright.
at it through our fingers.
Nice. You can stay up here.
Stay up here so we can
Great.
see those candles.
Good. Nice. Okay, you can pass it to someone else. Great. Let's turn that right up, right? Tilly, you are ready? Good. You get to keep it there for a little while. Nice. Good job. And then your sister, Nathaniel, what's your sister? Okay, here. She can come right over here. Come right over here in front. Okay. Good. What a helper. Great. Yeah, I know. So, good. Here, why don't you guys do this extra one over here too? Okay, then you can blow that out over the side. Okay, so now we get the light. Bring that light in.
Bring that light in with our hands. 1, 2, 3, and let's look at it through our fingers. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu להדליק נר של Shabbat.
Just take a breath. And you can keep your eyes closed and put your hands down, see if you feel the difference of the light. And then slowly open your eyes. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, just leave that one.
Thank you to our students, our angels, and the bringers of light.
Not yet. I'll let you know. So thank you. You may have a seat again. Okay.
Our students are our angels, our bringers of light, and we get to welcome our Shabbat angels in next. So please join us in Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem.
13. Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Beitchem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So in our opening songs this evening, when I came in tonight, I was almost told David Friedman, good morning. I don't know where I am today, but I'm here welcoming Shabbat with all of you is what I'm trying to remember. So raise your hand if you saw, I know we're going to get to this shortly, but raise your hand if you saw the moon coming into the driveway or around the corner. So put your hand in the shape of the moon. Yeah, so it was a crescent, it was a thin crescent, and it was going one way or the other way. Yes. So when you leave tonight, go look for the moon again and see if you can see where it is, if it's in the same place, and see if you can see which direction it is. Because whatever direction it is, it's always that way on the new moon as it's getting towards the full moon, and then it's always going to be the other way as it starts to wane and the month is starting to leave. So, those of us who may have been paying attention to Jewish time, it's hard, there's so many different things to pay attention to, but I'm letting you know that we have arrived at the month of Adar, which means that it is
Adar Sheni.
Exactly, Adar Sheni. We are at the very, very beginning of the month of Adar, which means that on the full moon, as you keep watching the moon, when it gets to be big and round, a little bit shy of that, but just about big and round, it's going to be the holiday of Purim. And so we hope to see you either here in person or on Zoom for our special Purim evening. So in honor of just past Rosh Chodesh Adar, I invite you to join us in singing Misha Nichnas Adar. When Adar, the month of Adar, comes in, Marbim Besimcha. We get to be in the fullness of joy increasing. So let me just see a little movement of joy. Simcha! Nice. And those of you on Zoom, let's see your simcha movement too. So, great. Okay. And Mishe, 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 Nichnas Adar. That repeats. Mishe, 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 Nichnas Adar. Mishe nichnas adar marbim besimcha. Come on. Besimcha. Mishe nichnas adar marbim besimcha. Once more. Mishe, 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 Nichnas Adar. Mishe, 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 Nichnas Adar. Mishe, Nichnas Adar. Marbim besimcha. Mishe nichnas adar marbim besimcha. So we are getting ready for Shabbat. We are getting ready for Purim because Adar has arrived.
Adar has arrived. We've been bringing our Adar joy, and we're going to continue with our Shabbat joy on page 25 with Shiru Ladonai. Shiru Ladonai, Shiru Shir Chadash, Shiru Ladonai, Kol Haaretz, Shiru Shiru Shir Chadash, Shiru Ladonai, Kol Haaretz, Shiru Ladonai, Baruchu Shemo, Basru miyom leyom, Yeshuato, Shiru Ladonai, Baruchu Shemo, Basru miyom leyom, Yeshuato.
We have a lot of people.
Page 41. We prepared to welcome the Sabbath bride. And since it's been a little while since we've been here doing this, a reminder that before that last verse, especially those of you who came up in honor for candle lighting, you will have the opportunity to go and help open the doors to welcome the Sabbath bride in under the wonderful tutelage of Nancy Parker. Or perhaps the 7th graders will get us ready, it sounds like.
Oh, that's why, because it's
the first two verses
the
on
7th
page
grade
41,
spot or something like
and
that.
then we'll sing the last two verses
All right.
on page 47. Lechadodi
לקראת קהלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לחדורי לקראת קהלה, פני שבת נקבלה, שמור וזכור, בדיבור אחד השמיענו, אל המיוחד אדוני, אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ותפארת ולתהילה, לחדורי לקראת קהלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לחדורי לקראת קהלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לקראת שבת לכו ונלחקים בקול הברכה מראש מקדם נסוכה סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה, 47 לקראת קהלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לחדורי לקראת קהלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
Page 47, ימינו שמאל,
ימינו שמאל, תפוצי ואת אדוני, תריצי על יד איש, פן פרצי ונשמחה, ונגילה, לחדורי לקראת קהלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לחדורי לקראת קהלה, פני שבת נקבלה. בואי בשלום, אתם בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצולה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לחדורי לקראת קהלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לחדורי לקראת קהלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
Thank you, everyone, for welcoming our Sabbath Queen for us. We've been singing and dancing and celebrating themes of joy and welcome tonight. And it's very important for us to keep in mind the importance of welcome on Shabbat and all week long. And we're going to be talking about welcome this evening in our Shabbat of Refugee Shabbat, and the importance of welcoming newcomers to our shores and helping people settle and feel at home when they come to America. Tonight is Refugee Shabbat, and we are very lucky to have an expert on refugee issues in our midst. And so Bill Frelick is going to come up now and share some thoughts with us about this topic and help us understand the importance of Refugee Shabbat and what's going on in the world, especially relevant right now, and what we can do about it. So we're going to let Bill share his knowledge with us.
And Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
All right. Well, we did plan Refugee Shabbat, months ago. Kanahura this week, who could have believed that we've had more refugees in the last 7 days than ever before in history. 1 million new refugees just in the last 7 days. So, and again, Kanahura, not just for a refugee Shabbat, but it is really overwhelming. As mentioned, I work for Human Rights Watch. I am the director of the refugee work for Human Rights Watch. So this week has been a rather busy one for me, as you can imagine. I'm coordinating work of our researchers that are in Ukraine, that are on the borders with Poland, with Hungary, with Slovakia, and working out all the various, trying to get, as we've succeeded. Today, temporary protected status was announced for the United States, and yesterday for the European Union. So there's some good things that are happening. But it's an emergency that we are dealing with, and we will, of course, be continuing to deal with in a big way in the coming months. But for the last 6 months, we thought we were dealing with another huge emergency with the Taliban takeover in Afghanistan. I've been working, and again, as part of my job, I've been interviewing Afghan refugees remotely in Turkey and talking about the experiences that they've had trying to cross borders, going into Pakistan and Iran and Turkey, trying to get into Greece and Bulgaria and being rejected in place after place. And we, as our congregation, we're welcoming an Afghan family that has come and is seeking our help. And I'm going to talk a bit about more about that as we go on. But I think the thing to do really tonight is to start with our story, the Jewish story, which is the story that's in the Parsha, the Torah portion that we studied this week. This is the Torah portion this week is the last book, the last chapter of the book of Exodus. And the book of Exodus, as most of the kids in the audience, and hopefully all the grown-ups know, is essentially the Passover story. It's the story of when we were slaves in Egypt, when we were persecuted by Pharaoh. It's the story of escaping slavery, escaping persecution, and going into the sea, and the danger that the sea might represent, and going into the desert and wandering the desert, and the crisis of faith of wandering and not knowing what awaits you, and coming and seeking a promised land and seeking sanctuary, seeking freedom. This is our story. It's a classic refugee story, the book of Exodus, and it's central to who we are. It's also the story that we as Jews have experienced many, many times over in our history. And one of the things that we're hoping to do in the Oneg tonight after services is for people to share their family stories if they know them, or their own stories if they have refugee experiences in their own families. So welcome people after the service for the Oneg to share about a bit of your own stories. But there's a lot more to the Passover story when you dig into it, when you think about it, when you think about how the Israelites were considered to be immigrants. They were not considered to be equal in Egypt. Pharaoh was able to persecute them. He was able to treat them as second class or third class or fourth class, as the case may be, and actually to enslave them because they weren't considered to be Egyptian themselves. And when we think about that, when we think about what causes people to be refugees in so many places, or people that have gone as immigrants to one country or another, we see again and again and again this kind of discrimination where people are not accepted as being members of that society. For example, in Myanmar, which many people know as Burma, you have a minority called the Rohingya. And there again, the Myanmar government has said, we don't accept you as being Burmese, as being part of our country, as being Myanmar, even though people have oftentimes lived there for generations. And 5 years ago, they expelled nearly 1 million Rohingyas into Bangladesh. And they're now refugees because of that same discrimination against them as a people, as not belonging, as having been other. And here in this country, we have treated immigrants to this country as less than American, and not given young people that have lived their entire life here the opportunity to become legally fully Americans and are still faced with deportation. So when we do look at the modern times, we see in the same way that our people went into the Sea of Reeds We see refugees going into the Mediterranean Sea or the Aegean Sea, risking everything for the chance to escape persecution. And when we think of the Sinai Desert, in our own history, we should look at the Sahara Desert, because there are refugees that are fleeing Boko Haram in Nigeria, that are fleeing from Mali, that are fleeing from horrible persecution in Cameroon, that are wandering today as we speak in the Sahara Desert, much like our forefathers did in the Sinai. So when we look at this week's Torah portion, we see some really amazing things. This is the Torah portion where you might remember last week's Torah portion was when Moses, who had led the people out of slavery and out of captivity, instructs them on the building of the Mishkan, the tabernacle. It's often translated as the dwelling place. And what he did was he called for all generously hearted people, the entire community, to come together and bring gifts and to help build the Mishkan, to build the dwelling place. And in this week's Torah portion, the work is completed. And I'll read, they brought to the tabernacle the tent, all its utensils, its hooks, its frames, its bars, its pillars and bases, its coverings of goatskins, and its lamps. Well, I want to tell you something. You kids might have an image of Moses as this old man with a long beard. Some of the adults may have a similar one, Cecil B. DeMille and Charlton Heston. But I want to correct this. For Oseh Shalom, the image that we should have, the picture we should have, is Eileen Hollander. Because what Eileen did was she put a sign-up genius list with all the elements, every one of the things that we needed to build the Mishkan, to build the dwelling place. And we look now, I went back and I saw every item has been checked off. We have all the utensils, the hooks, the bed frames, the tables, the drapes, the sheets, the rugs, the lamps. The generously hearted people of the entire community have come through, and we have fulfilled the command of our Moses at this moment. And what we're finding is that when we think of the building of the Mishkan, in the Bible, it is called the dwelling place of God. Now, we are modern Reconstructionist Jews, and where we find God is in community. Where we find God is in our generous hearts as they become more generous. When we feel them growing, we find God in our building of the Mishkan, in providing a dwelling place, in providing a home, in the offerings that we're able to bring, and in the good deeds, the mitzvot, that we're now doing for this refugee family, and that we will be doing. And I look at Tilly over here, and just last weekend I saw Tilly with the new refugee family. They're not even in their new home yet. And she was going through the alphabet, and Tilly was doing like the letter A, and with the little girl was tracing the letter A, and Tilly was doing just a delightful job, a wonderful, wonderful job of teaching and sharing, and her generous heart was just overflowing. And I welcome everyone to be able to do as Tilly has done, to welcome the refugees, to help build them, to build their strength as they build ours, really. And so I want to introduce our Moses, Eileen Hollander, and I want to introduce Fran Tell here. And I don't see, is Joan, I'm seeing behind masks, I'm not sure if Joan is here, but these are the key volunteers for coordinating volunteer work for the refugee family that we've sponsored. And we have a handout that I thank Claire Menuick for putting together, of local agencies that are doing phenomenal work to help refugees. And so what I want to suggest to you is that, you know, in any way you can, for refugees that are far away, the kind of work that we do at Human Rights Watch, right here in our own community and within the state of Maryland, there are many, many opportunities to work together to help and to show solidarity, not only with ourselves as a community and building ourselves as a community, but in community with refugees themselves. And the book, when we finish reading this Torah portion, we finish the book of Exodus, there's a traditional calling out of the gathering of the community after this Torah portion is finished. And it's Chazak, Chazak, V'nit Chazek. This means be strong, and we strengthen each other. That's what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about we're strengthening each other, we strengthen the refugee community, and we strengthen ourselves in doing so. And so I ask you now, remember, Chazak, be strong. Chazak, be strong. V'nit Chazek, we strengthen each other's. If you can remember that, let's say it together, and let's do this in solidarity with our community, with the larger community, and with the refugees of the world. So please, Chazak, Chazak, V'nit Chazek. Shalom and good Shabbos.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much, Bill, for bringing that message to us. We're not going to take any Q&A right now. We're going to save it for our small group after services. If you'd like to gather, we'll take a moment for people to just pop into the oneg, but then we'll stay a little bit afterwards in here, and we'll have time for Q&A and for people to share their stories, as maybe coming to the U.S. as refugees or immigration stories. And I believe we'll have our member, Ioana Stoica, who will share her story as well. So we'll try to make all of that happen after services today.
There we go. So thank you again, Bill. And as we gather for community, we turn to page 57. 57, welcoming one another, welcoming the divine into our midst. Please rise as you are able.
Do we have students joining us? No? Okay. We're gonna do this together. Okay. Our call to prayer. Baruch hu et Adonai hamavorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai hamavorach leolam vaed.
You may be seated. I invite you to again, just close your eyes for a moment. Remember that moon, and whether you saw it or you just want to imagine a sliver of a moon lighting up this dark night. You can imagine a starry sky that you have seen at some point, and how the light in the sky fades over time to arrive in the darkness, and then the darkness slowly becomes light in the early morning hours, and the sun's strength grows stronger and stronger. Some wonderful sunny days we've had recently, and then it starts to set, just feeling that rhythm in our bodies, the gift of time, the gift of light, the gift of cycles. Baruch atah Adonai Amariv Aviv.
We'll continue on with Ahavat Olam on page 65.
Page 63.
63,
Yes.
Thank you.
Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael Ahavta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu limadeta Al ken Adonai Eloheinu B'shofeinu u'b'kumei
אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני,
ברוך הוא שמו,
אוהב עמו ישראל.
Page 65 is the Shema. I'd like to invite up 4th graders to 7th graders who would like to help lead the Shema. You can come up to the shulchan, space out a little bit. That's fine. That's fine. Great. Okay. Ready? Ready? Cover your eyes. 1, 2, 3.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Hashem Gadol Le'olam Va'ed. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם מאוד על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך
Just take a breath, remembering the divine and all our comings and goings, that when we act rightly, the earth responds, the rain falls in its seasons, all creatures and beings have the food that they need. And we remember tzitzit. We use a tzitzit to remember that sacred story of us being refugees. They remind us of something that is larger, and they remind us of our journey as refugees in Yetziat Mitzrayim, and how we got out, that it is possible to leave the constraints, leave the Mitzrayim, leave the narrowness, that refugees can find a home. And we have the opportunity, when we are not refugees, all the more so to help those who are searching for safety. May we remember that when we look at the heavens, when we look at the seas, when we walk, when we sit down, when we rise, when we lay down. Adonai Elohechem Emet. So we turn to page 79 for a new version of Mi Chamocha in honor of this refugee Shabbat. The words may be put into the chat, I believe, but either way, you don't really need to have all the words. You just need to listen to Cantor Caitlin, and I'll be leading the response part. So
we'll have a little call and response. This is something a little different for us. We have a chant that expresses not only the joyfulness of walking through the water, but also the strength and reassurance that we are here with one another and God is with us as well. This is a walking song. If you feel like standing up and walking with me, you can. When you walk through the water, I'll walk with you.
I'll walk with you.
When you walk through the water, I'll walk with you.
I'll walk with you.
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. afraid.
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
I'll walk with you.
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 When your journey brings you to my shore, I'll welcome you.
I'll welcome you.
When your journey brings you to my shore, I'll welcome you.
I'll welcome you.
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
I'll welcome you.
I'll welcome you.
I'll welcome you.
I'll welcome you.
I'll walk with you.
I'll walk with you.
I'll walk with you.
I'll walk with you.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai.
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 Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh.
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 Nora tehilo. You know the next part.
Oh, say, fele.
I'll walk with you.
I'll walk with you.
I'll welcome you.
I'll welcome you.
I'll walk with you.
I'll walk with you.
I'll welcome you.
I'll welcome you.
I'll walk with 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 you.
I'll
Walk with you. As we walk on our way, may we be held in a sukkah of wholeness, finding it again when we lay down, hashkivenu v'ha'amidenu, when we rise up. Bottom of 81. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. Please rise for the Amidah, your personal prayers, beginning on page 91 with the traditional text 88, meditations and Kavanot beforehand, wherever you would like. kol Yisrael, Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al kol Yisrael, Ve'al kol Yoshvei Tevel, Ve'im'u Return from our prayers to prayers for healing. I invite you to put names into the chat. And tonight we are remembering Pauline Pivowar, holding in our hearts Pauline Pivowar, Heather Kuznets, Julian Miller, Julie Younger, Chana Bat Moshe V'Dvorah, Rabbi Marsha Prager, Harav Miriam Yael Bat Sarah, Van Tipton, Tzidkiyahu Yehuda Ben Van Beverly, Roberta Shapiro, Gary Rosenthal, Mary Meyerson, Chana Bat Avim Basara, Larry Clamage, Leber Ben Yehuda Leb Lillian, Diane Miller, Jean Lamb, Thomas Gaines, Elizabeth Gaines, Buddy Lake, Grayson Operman, Chuck Operman, Sharon Millis, Akinami Green, Nivea Charles, Kristen Cotley, Sheila Daniels, Thelma Letman, Sharon Brocher, Kathy Simone, Jen Global, Gerald Newman, Jill Boer, Yael Bat Peretz, Charlie Wieners, and Mary Wieners, Bella Clamage, Baila Bat Brandol, Yisrael Yitzchak, Bonnie Street Hamilton, Retha Pokrifke, Simeon Becher, Stan Kuznets, Joshua Ben Moshe Vabasia, Yelena Skamarakas, Leah Bat Luba Simeon, Luba Becher, Barbara Jacobs, Batya, Bat Minu Velvel. Anna, Elna, Refanala, please God, heal them. Anna, Elna, Anna, Elna, Anna, Elna, Refana, La, Anna, Elna, Anna, Elna, Anna, Elna, Refana, La, Anna, Elna, Anna, Elna, Anna, Elna, Refana, La. Holding our loved ones, those we've named and those we have not named, with visions of vitality. All those who are suffering of body, mind, and spirit, who are fleeing for their lives, who are caught up in the chaos of modern-day pharaohs. Modern-day pharaohs, we send healing even to the pharaohs and to all those who suffer from those pharaohs, imagining everyone in fullness of health and vitality of body, mind, and spirit, breathing that in. And let us say, Amen. Turn to page 125 and rise. Change comes from us. It is for us, Aleinu. Eloheinu, our God. It is Aleinu. It is upon us to look for that brokenness, to step forward, to do what we can do. This Sunday morning, everyone is invited to the OSRS Tikkun Olam Assembly at 9:15 to hear what our students have been learning about and thinking about and challenging us as a congregation about. We will be hearing Rabbi Rebecca and Mark Cook will be able to hear their requests. So please come to support them in stepping forward in Tikkun Olam, which has its source in Aleinu. It is for us to make this world the world that it can be.
From 121. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שנתן לנו תורת אמת, וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Page 125 at the end.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
You may be seated. Mourner's Kaddish is on page 131, followed by announcements and our birthday blessings and the rest of our closing First Friday goodness. Tonight we remember the following yahrzeits. Israel Hilsenrath, the father of Ernie Hilsenrath, the father of Ernie Hilsenrath. Irene Brosinas, the mother of Peter Brosinas, and Marion Mock, the mother of Barry Mock. If you are in mourning, or it is your custom to rise for Mourner's Kaddish, or you're remembering a yahrzeit, I invite you to do so now. Page 131. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shmei Rabbah, bi'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayei echon u'vyomei echon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kari v'imru.
Amen.
Yahei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shmei d'kudesha.
Brichu.
La'el amin kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiran bi'alma v'imru.
Amen.
Yehei shlam Rabbah min shamaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru.
Amen.
Ose shalom b'momav, hu ya'aseh shalom. עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו Amen. May their memories be for our blessing. Announcements this evening. Would you like to give them, Mark? You're sitting extra upright, or should I just, somebody you can hear from, somebody other than me? No. Okay. You don't often get to give the announcements. Over there, the mic's down there too. Yeah. There you are.
Hi, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
I'm usually doing this before you all get here, testing everything. So the announcements for today, next Friday, the Howard County Federation's new director will join us, Joel Frankel, and he'll be discussing how they can support OSE in the greater Jewish community in the area. So that's next Friday. Tomorrow morning, we're going to have John Reel and Ellen Rubenstein doing the Shabbat service, and
Zoom.
followed by Torah study at 11. Then this weekend, Sunday at 11:30, there's a Zoom craft group meetup. If you need more information, check with Judy Katz, and just look into the weekly e-news. For any of this information, go to your weekly e-news for the links. Let's see. March 9th, we're going to have a Zoom event, Greening Your Finances. There'll be several speakers on this, and that'll be March 9th at 7 p.m. And then coming up March 13th is the early registration deadline for the first annual OSE camping trip, which will happen May 13th to 15th. And that's going to be over in beautiful Cunningham Falls State Park over in Frederick. So it's only about an hour away, less if you live out there. And let's see, most importantly, the Men's Club will be hosting the wine tasting and online sale, which you can purchase already. And then they will be here March 16th during Perm, so you can taste and buy more wines. Let's see, we're going to be doing a Perm experience and services Wednesday for next March 16th. And that'll start at 6:15 p.m. Just checking. And then let's see. And we're still looking for some more volunteers for the Recon Convention later this month. So if you're available anytime, it's going to be held over in Tyson's Corner. So it's reachable for us. And if there are any people who are available to help set up that, please check the weekly e-news and click on the link. And thank you so much, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you. So we have arrived at the first Friday in March, which means those of us who have March birthdays are invited to come up to the Bima. And if you are on Zoom, please rise from your place. Oh, yes, additional announcements before moving on, please. Yeah, sure.
Come on up.
Moshe, for you, of course.
Right. Thank you, Bill, for your words and just enlightening us all to what's going on in the world. But what? Oh, sorry. Okay, let me take this down. Take my jacket off, you said? Oh,
Speak into the mic. Sing out, Louise.
Okay, so after, so we are working with this Afghan family, and after several weeks of them having been staying in a hotel, it sounds like we've procured housing for them. It's almost a definite, and the almost definite move-in date will be a week from Sunday, so a week from this Sunday. Which means that we need some folks with really good backs to help us lift some furniture. So if you have a good back and you have a vehicle which might assist us with transporting some furniture needs to be picked up from people's homes. There may be some things picked up here. We're still kind of working out the details, but if you can help us with either your large vehicle or truck or your strength to help us lift, we do have some steps that we have to go up. And the location that we will be taking things to is in Silver Spring near the downtown area. So not too far from here. And we're just so excited for them, and they are super excited. So fingers crossed that everything goes well the next few days and that a lease is signed and that they will be able to move in. So, and thank the congregation, thank everybody, all of you for your generosity and, for donating all the things that you are and donating and for all the support, generosity. So. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Eileen. Yeah, so you'll keep the congregation abreast, you and Mark, and we'll let us know if, is it that 13th? If it ends up being the 14th, whatever, you'll let us know. It'll for sure be that Sunday. Okay, Sunday is a very busy day for Oseh Shalom. There's something for everybody then.
And where can people find the link for the Sign Up Genius? It'll come out again. Okay, it'll be in the e-news? Okay. No? Too late. Okay. Watch your email. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Mark is on it.
Great. So, and thank you to Candor Caitlin for organizing with Bill and, oh my goodness, I'm blanking on
Many
different
people,
names. Many different people.
Rebecca was very involved.
Yes, Rebecca.
Claire, we
Yes.
had Linda, we had
Emily,
Blank.
yes.
I'm forgetting other people. And we had wonderful participation from an ad hoc refugee Shabbat committee. And thank you so much to everyone who has pulled together to help make this happen. One quick note, we are going to gather at the Oneg in a small group, and I'm going to, through the magic of technology, make that a little satellite spot to dial into our meeting. So those who are already on the Zoom, please stay on if you would like to participate in the small group discussion and keep the conversation going about the refugee theme for the evening.
Yep, so we'll get to hear from Ioana about her experience leaving Romania, and then those of us who also have experiences or know family stories, there'll be a space for sharing and making this real and personal in our own lives as well. So it's Rosh Chodesh, and you know what that means? Some people have birthdays. yes. It's Rosh Chodesh and it's exactly our first Friday in March. So March birthdays. I invite you up to the bima or to stand if you are on Zoom, pointing to the sides where I see the Zoomers. And I'm a March birthday too, so I'll march
Irish uncle would
forward.
say, you're older than you were and younger than you will be, and glad we are for that.
Isn't it March birthday?
Yom Huledet Sameach, Yom Huledet
Sameach, Yom Huledet Sameach, Yom Huledet Sameach.
It's a Shehecheyanu moment.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehecheyanu v'kimanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehecheyanu v'kimanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. Amen. So happy birthday to those of us here, and to Alan and Al and Christy and Ronnie and Marilyn and all of us. So may we continue to have many, many more years of life and health and happiness. Amen.
Amen. We will close with Ma Yafeh Hayom. Yes? No?
Kiddush, and then
Kiddush.
if you are in OSRS, we invite you up to help with Kiddush, followed by Ma Yafeh Hayom.
Yes.
So, page 119, Kiddush.
So
I
who are we
invite
having coming up?
those of you OSRS students, everybody,
All of
I
our
invite you to
students.
rise.
Students, come on back up for our Kiddush.
If you would like some grape juice for Kiddush. So you can come on over here. We'll put this in the side here. Great. And we will hold it. We'll just hold it right now. And you can put your hand under it to hold all the blessings that it's holding, and we can face the congregation.
Page 119. Savrei Chavarei.
L'chaim.
Baruch
Atah
atah
Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'hatzavanu v'shabbat kodsho v'yahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit ki hu yom tehillah למיקרא הקודש, זכר לציאת מצרים. Remembering the Exodus. כי אלינו קראת, ואותנו קידשת, לעבודתך, ושבת קודשך, באהבה ורצון, הנחלתנו.
ברוך אתה אדוני,
ברוך שמו.
מקדיש
Shabbat. And now we can drink. Oh, there's one up there for you. Sorry.
too late.
Yes. And we will close with Maya Fe Hayom. So we can all stand here. We can, or stay up here. We can stand up a little higher so people can see
Come
us
sing
more.
this with me if you like. Would love to have your voices.
Maya Fe Hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Maya Fe Hayom. Shabbat Shalom. You can also look over there. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, OSRSers. Shabbat Shalom. So please join the oneg, the conversation afterwards.
Shabbat Shalom. Congratulations to everyone. What a wonderful drash and a beautiful service. And the children did such a great job.
Yes, they did. The adults did pretty well too.
Sent out a little stamp.
So are we reconvening at 9:15? Is that the plan?
Say again?
Are we reconvening at 9:15?
I think that's what it sounded like. I think they didn't want us to watch them eat
Ah,
snacks and drink snacks. And so it's like, go have your own snack and then we'll come back. Okay.
ah.
I'm thinking that they're going to give people a chance to schmooze a little bit. And
Shabbos snacks.
yes. Ilana, why don't you go? Can you go eat and come back?
Yeah, I'm gonna take a little break. I thought I was on at 8:45.
What do you think this is? Europe? You don't eat until 9 o'clock? What is wrong with you?
I
girl?
know, our family, yeah.
How's
Oh,
parenting, Luana?
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Emily?
How's parenting?
It's good. It's good. My husband and my baby are on a different Zoom, and they're sending me messages in the chat.
The baby knows how to chat already. I told
I
you he was a
know.
genius.
I know. He's a smart baby. Yeah.
He is. And look at his parents. All right.
Okay,
who
I
else
think
is-
I'm gonna take just like a little break, but I'll be back.
Sorry, for everybody else who's listening, please take a break. They're going to go have, they're going to have ONEG for a little bit, and then we'll reconvene at 9:15 for the discussion. So take 5. We will see you in a little bit.
Take this back. Batteries. I'm going to take something. I like these, I don't know.
Hi, folks. Can you hear us?
It's pretty amazing. And I wouldn't be surprised if they quadrupled that number. I wouldn't be surprised if they had 4 million
Okay, can you folks hear us?
with them. Depending
Yes?
on,
All right. We're going to gather a group in just a moment.
I think it's about 44 million. So, you know, you 4 million.
Okay.
Having trouble seeing the. Oh, Charlie's there. Great.
Yep, Charlie's there.
Can you hear, or is it going to be? Is there too much background noise for people?
You guys can hear okay? All right. That looks like a yes.
Okay.
All right. So what we can do, we can move this a little closer to ourselves, too. 1 second. We're going to adjust here.
Well, and then the camera went.
Yeah, that's all right. There we go.
All right.
Okay.
And I don't know if we have anybody else from that was in the sanctuary here. But what we wanted to do was really give people an opportunity to share. And as I said in the Drosh, the refugee story is really our story. You know, it's at the heart of who we are as a people. It's at the heart of the Passover story. It's, in a sense, if you think about it, it really goes back to the Garden of Eden and the expulsion from the Garden of Eden in a way. So in our myth and our history, the idea of wandering, the idea of facing persecution and testing our faith in the desert is something that we've gone through l'dor v'dor, from generation to generation. And so there are stories, our own stories, our family stories that maybe you've heard of that have been passed down from your generation to your generation. Or maybe in our own generation there are people in the congregation that, you know, whether you're officially recognized as a refugee or not, you have a story that talks about the experience of leaving your homeland, of leaving your country, being displaced and going and seeking a new life in another place. And I can't see if you wanna, I can't quite see if you're on.
Can I interrupt for just a second?
Sure.
People who are online were told that you were going to start it up again at 9:15. So some people have left and I think are planning on coming back. So I don't know how many of those people you might be missing.
9:15.
Oh, okay. My goodness.
Oh, that's kind of a long wait for people. Did they know that it was a family service starting at 7:30?
Miscommunication.
So how do you call into it?
How do we call into it? We just log in through the Zoom.
So what do people want? I don't know what to do about that, Craig.
Yeah, I think that was a miscommunication. I'm sorry about that, but we're here.
Just go ahead. I mean, I think most of us stayed. I just
Okay.
wanted to get out there.
All right, great. Let's keep going.
So Ivana, if you're on.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, you're there. Okay, great. Your name doesn't appear, so I'm having trouble seeing the screen from here. Plus, my glasses are fogging
It's something
up
in my Zoom settings where
Yeah.
now you have to roll over to see people's names. I don't know why.
But maybe you could sort of just talk a little bit about your own experience and yeah.
Okay, sure. Hi, everybody. So I'm Ioana, and I've been an OSA member for 4 years. And I've been a U.S. citizen for over 2 decades after my family was granted political asylum here. And so as part of today's Refugee Shabbat, I was asked to share my story. And, you know, as we all know, you know, this themed Shabbat comes at an especially opportune time because, you know, we're watching the events in horror kind of unfolding in Ukraine, which is a neighbor country to my homeland. And, you know, I've been watching over the past few days as refugees from Ukraine have been flooding Romania and Poland, Moldova, and other neighboring countries. And they've been welcomed there with open arms, sadly in ways that other refugees have not been at times, including in our own country. So, you know, as we all know, this themed Shabbat comes at an especially opportune time because, you know, we're watching the events in horror kind of unfolding in Ukraine, which is a neighbor country to my homeland. And, you know, I've been watching over the past few days as refugees from Ukraine have been flooding Romania and Poland, Moldova, and other neighboring countries. And they've been welcomed there with open arms, sadly in ways that other refugees have not been that's the context. And, back to my own family story. So I was born in communist Romania during Ceausescu's austerity period. And it was a couple of very rough decades, long food lines, rations, non-working water, electricity, political suppression. The way my dad tells the story, he knew he wanted out since his youth. And he worked hard in school with his sole goal, because the only people allowed to leave the country were basically high-level politicians or professionals attending conferences, usually in communist countries. So, eventually he made the ranks of Romania's team to build our country's first computers, and he began his travels to Beijing, Moscow, and eventually to Berlin. So it was only later that I found out that pretty much my mother lived in fear that any one of these trips would be one from which she would not return. And because of heavy surveillance, my dad never told anyone his plans, and he never did come back from Berlin. We found out from the Securitate, Romania's secret police, that he had not boarded his plane back from a conference in East Germany. And for the next few years, my mother, sister, and I lived as basically pariahs, the family of a defector. There were continual threats and surveillance. Our apartment, our belongings were confiscated. My father was put on trial in absentia and sentenced. My mother lost many of her friends, along with her compulsory party membership and so on. On my dad's side, he became an undocumented immigrant, and then basically worked manual labor jobs in a country for which he did not know the language. And he was aided by a network of faith organizations, churches, and synagogues in crossing the Berlin Wall and into the free world. And from there, what I've been able to gather from him is that he waited in line at the US Embassy for months, attempting to get an interview for asylum. And he tells me that when the interviewer asked him why he wanted to come to the US, he said, because you can be free there to think, to be who you want. He also appealed to American politicians with the same argument, and found sympathy in Representative Connie Morella of Maryland, who was representing Maryland at the time. And she sponsored his application for asylum. So a few months later, he was on a plane to Maryland. And then after that, the Romanian Revolution followed a year later. And then it took my mom and I and my sister about 2 years after that to get all of our papers and everything else in order to be able to come. So we were able to come after the revolution, like a couple years after that. So that's my story. And, today there are so many others who are kind of in the same or even worse position that my family was in. So I'm very privileged every day for being here, and also just very sad at how many are not given the same opportunities. And really, I'm very appreciative to have found, our community at OSE that has been doing so much on this issue with, everybody here's help. And, this work is just more important than ever. So that's my story.
It's great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ioana. I'm curious if there are others who, yes, exactly. Let's give our jazz hands. I'm curious if there are others who know of refugee stories in your family history. If you want to just raise your hand and say, yes, that's part of my story as well. People who came over to the U.S. under duress, or who came over with official refugee status. How many people are aware of that in your history? So some people here. Anybody online? Does anybody else have a story that maybe is a couple generations back that they'd like to share? Yes, go ahead.
My grandparents came from actually outside of Kiev, and my grandfather was put in front of a firing squad, and they ran out of bullets before they got to him. But then they came in 1922, and my grandmother was pregnant with my father, and they lived in New York City. We were very lucky.
Thank you. Anybody else know any little outlines of details of stories?
I think you should tell yours, Curtis.
Oh, sorry.
Your grandfather's story.
I'm sort of blanking on the town they came from, but it was exact town, but it was near
Take your mask off.
Near Tulchin, which isn't so far from Odessa, but my grandfather's family owned a shop, and in the they went to the Christian school. We were allowed to do that because of the fact they owned this shop that the local duchess patronized. That's the family story. And in 1917, when the revolution occurred and the whites were fighting the reds, the Bolsheviks came through and decided that because my grandfather's family had been patronized by this duchess, they were enemies of the people, and they ran away to the Romanian border. And at that point, they ran out of money and were stuck there. And wrote to my grandfather's uncle, who was just a few years older than him, but he had left 15 years earlier and ran away to Canada. He was in the business of buying furs from the trappers and bringing them back into Montreal, for wholesale. And he is a bit of a bon vivant, the story goes. So he gets a letter from my grandfather's family saying, we're really in desperate straits. Can you send us some money? So the story goes that he goes into his weekly poker game with, the backwoods of Montreal, and says, boys, this week I got to win big. And the story is he did. And that's how, he got the money to send to, his older brother, family. His older brother was already dead, but, not his wife, his nephews. Actually, one nephew died on the border. But two of them made it, along with two sisters, and he got them all into Canada. Really interesting guy, my Uncle Harry. He ended up sort of being the black sheep of the family because at the age of 40-something, he divorced his wife and ran off with his French-Canadian secretary, who became my Aunt Jean. My grandmother would never, would barely talk to him. Many years later, I went to, after I'd spent a year as a student in France, went to Montreal to visit
There are kids listening to this, so you don't need to tell that story.
All right. Well, all right. Okay, fair enough. All right. So I went to, the
PG version.
Yeah, I'll try. I mean, I went to Montreal to visit my. I'm not quite sure how to censor this one.
Yeah, censor your dad.
Fair enough. Somebody else can go.
You can tell the adults later.
I can tell the adult version later. Yeah.
I can share a story with I only have a little bit of detail, but this is Caitlin, Scanner Caitlin. Despite my Irish name, the other side of my family are Shapiros and Rotevskis from Ukraine. And they came from, the story in the families that they came from Odessa, but it was probably some tiny town near Odessa. And my great-grandfather came over, on my grandfather's side, came over first. And then he sent for my great-grandmother and their two children, my Aunt Bess and my grandfather, Nathaniel. And my Aunt Bess was probably 5 or 6, and Nathaniel was 2 or 3, and I have a picture of the two of them, and he has this face of an imp. He was a total troublemaker. But they came in through the city of Portland, Maine, and they were there for a few years, and then they settled in Boston. There was a little bit of back and forth, and the family was quite poor. But my grandfather ended up going to college and then went to law school. It's an astonishing story because the family was very uneducated when they came. And he well, then he had his own legal troubles, and this is a family show, so I won't share those. But my mother, his daughter, met my father, who himself was an immigrant, although not a refugee. He was an economic immigrant from Scotland, and the two of them met in college in the 50s, and so it's a very American story. But long history there, the Shapiras and the Rotevskis. I don't know as much detail about the Rotevsky side, but my Aunt Bess, who had come to the U.S. as a 5 or 6-year-old, became a social worker and worked for an organization like HIAS in the Boston area for many years doing refugee resettlement.
I see Marilyn or Charlie, I think, has a hand up, so maybe.
Yes, a lot of people do know a little bit about my story, but my grandparents were from Trochenbrod, which is in Ukraine, and we've been watching the map to see what's going on. But my grandfather came in 1906 by himself, and he came from Bremen to New York, and then he got to Baltimore. And then 4 years later, my grandmother came, but I heard the story is that he never sent for her. She was a wet nurse in Ukraine, in Trochenbrod, and she brought herself and my aunt, who was 4 years old, and she came over with my grandfather's brother. And they all came to America. But I just imagine them knocking on the door and saying, "Here I am," and I don't know if he expected them by then, but anyway, but that's the story that I have. So we're really looking at the map and watching what's going on, because when we went to Ukraine in 2012 and 2009, we still have friends that are there, and they're keeping in touch with us just to let us know sort of what's going on. Trochenbrod is
just northeast of Lvov.
So, so far it's hard to tell how they're doing. They can't really say too much about how they're doing. But when they reply to something, I figure, well, they're okay. So
yeah,
we're just watching it.
Say again, Bill.
To talk about what happened there, what happened in the Holocaust in Trochenbrod, if you don't mind, to talk about why they were fleeing. My
grandfather came in 1906, but that was because of pogroms.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother followed, but Ali and I have been to Trochenbrod, and we've met a lot of descendants of the Trochenbroders. And in 1942, the Nazis came and destroyed the whole town of 5,000 Jews.
So if they hadn't fled, that's what fate would have awaited them.
There were a lot of my relatives that we know that didn't make it. And like I said, there were only 36 out of 5,000 who did survive the war. And the town of Trochenbrod is totally flat. There's nothing left.
There's a memorial that Americans and Israelis have erected. The land has been declared basically a no settlement zone by the local Ukrainian government.
You're cutting out, Charlie.
Sorry about that. I say the land where Trochenbrod was has been declared basically a no development zone by the local Ukrainian government. And so there won't be anything else built there. It'll remain as a memorial.
Okay, Linda, is that you with your hand up?
It is me, but Greg had his up first, I think.
Craig?
Okay, well, thank you. My father's family is from that same area as well. And my grandmother's family, although they were really more immigrants than refugees, but they came from what is now Lviv and was before that Lvov, but when they left was Lemberg because it was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and they left in the late 1800s. But I'm wondering, is Eileen around there? Because it's really her family story that I wanted to share. But if she's there, she should share it.
No, she's gone.
Okay, well, she's on her way home then. That's fair. She hasn't had dinner. Just briefly, her family story is pretty remarkable. Her mother and family were hidden in the mountains of Greece during the Holocaust. And although the immediate family survived, most of the extended family did not, because 9 out of 10 Greek Jews were killed. And they stayed in Greece until the oldest generation who had survived passed away. But in 1956, they were able to come to the United States. They had some family who had come previously, and I'm giving the very short version of this. Highest helped them when they got to Baltimore. And also when they got to Baltimore, they were put in touch with the family that had saved them in Greece, who they had completely lost touch with, but who a few years earlier had also come to Baltimore. And so the two families now are still connected, even though most of the people of the generation that knew each other in Greece are no longer living. The families still have a connection, and it's a very, very powerful story.
And I think Linda was going to share something next. Linda?
Yeah, and I don't know if Curtis left or not, but my grandmother's family also came from Ukraine, Odessa, wherever in the Odessa metropolitan area, but also went through Germany to England to Montreal because they came just in the midst of the Russian Civil War. The whites and the reds, they somehow managed to survive the pogroms and stayed, but then during the Russian Civil War had to leave, and also wound up in Canada, which is interesting, in Montreal. So I wonder if Curtis and I are somehow related, but more interesting, I guess more tragic, is, when I asked about the town from my grandfather, he said it was Radimishel in Ukraine. And, when I was there, I went in college, and then I went again in right after Chernobyl, actually. I was there and would ask, I would like to go see where Radimishel is. Can you, can we rent a car? Can we go? And people were like, we have no idea where that is. You don't want to go out there. I think there was just this general denial that Jews had ever lived in Kyiv or any place in Ukraine. When I finally made it to Israel and I go to Yad Vashem, and you're walking through, you're down to I don't exactly remember how, it's the area that shows all the towns and cities that were destroyed in the Holocaust. And there at the top of a column under Ukraine is Radimishel. It doesn't exist anymore. It didn't exist as of 1943. It was destroyed completely. And that's why nobody could tell us. And so to me, it had just been a word. And then it became a real place that had been where my grandfather's family was from. So I'll have to check with Curtis and see, what part of Montreal, because when I was a little kid, I was sent to go live with my family in Montreal. My parents were like, go, you need to have this experience. So I was sent to go live with my family in Canada by myself. I was 8 years old, and that was a life-changing experience.
It's funny to hear that Montreal connection. I probably am the last person to learn this, but my husband and I visited Montreal a couple of years ago and found that there was a really huge, thriving immigrant, polyglot kind of culture there, including a very large, thriving Jewish community and a number of competing bagel places. Montreal bagels are like a special thing, and they're a little bit sweet, and they're a little bit crisp. And they're a little bit different. And so we ended up on a food tour, and we sampled a bunch of different bagels from different places. So made a big impression on me. I'm sorry to end on such a, a food-oriented note, but I really said to him, if we were to ever have to flee to Canada, of course at the time that was not a small possibility, but thinking Montreal might be at the top of the list. It's a pretty awesome place.
Yeah, that's number. I am a substitute teacher. This is apropos of nothing, but I'm a substitute teacher, and one of the subjects I substitute in is French, and the kids, there's the sixth graders are just learning about culture and language, and none of them want to learn French, but the teacher made them pick a French-speaking country that they would go to, and it's like, well, there is Canada, and they were like, what? They speak French in Canada?
Boy, did they ever, because we also visited
there's
Quebec.
a whole place where if you don't speak French, and I said, that's how I learned to speak French. I was dumped in there, and I had to learn, so.
Yeah, Montreal, they are very bilingual, and they will tolerate you speaking to them in English, but in Quebec, you better be ready to bust out your high school French. Anyway, I think we will wrap up, because I can see here back at Oseh Shalom, we are closing down the restaurant, but I want to say thank you. Oh, Charlie had one more comment to close us up.
Alan's had a hand up for a long time.
I'm so sorry. Alan, go ahead.
I
didn't see it because it was hiding in the light.
There's a light right behind you, and you can't see the hand.
So sorry, Alan, go ahead.
And it's his birthday, too.
Hi.
Oh,
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Oh,
You're
Shabbat
older than
Shalom,
you
everyone.
were and younger than you will be.
Okay, thank you. My grandfather, paternal side, comes from Romania and the Bukovina area, which is like on the north east area of what was Romania at the time. And the borders kept on changing. They had undergone many pogrom types of experiences back in the 1800s through the early 1900s. And he was trained in a cheder. His last name is Schachter, so obviously there must have been Shachet rabbinic backgrounds to him. A very bright man. When it came to a choice of whether he was going to leave or stay with his parents, he decided to leave. I do not know the reason or the kind of story he had with his parents. All of his siblings left. He had 4 siblings that went to Israel. He decided to come to the United States. But it was very hard for him to get to the United States in the time when he was about 14, 15 years old. It goes to show you how much resourcefulness some of these refugees have at a very young age. So he decided to go to Austria. He learned German. He believed very much in the Germanic culture. The German language did help him. He got a number of jobs. He was able to earn enough money in Austria from probably 1906 through about 1908. And he came here by 1910. And he was able to do very well as a small businessman in the Lower East Side of New York. What I find most interesting is he sponsored a lot of people during World War II and after World War II. It served as a very good role model for my mom and dad, because my mom and dad did help a number of people who were coming to this country to get settled in this country. And I was able to see it, as a young child, and it kind of percolates. It's one of those things that's important to see. And when you get to know the people who are actually refugees and you get to talk to them and you get to feel what their situation is. It also came out very nicely with my brother and sister. They decided, with my mom's encouragement, to become exchange students. And my brother and sister went to South America and to Mexico. And those relationships really made a big difference in their lives and also as a role model. I decided to go to Israel when I was older in college rather than be an exchange student in high school. But I could see a big value that we need to connect with people in different countries at some point when we were growing up. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much, Alan, and everybody for all these wonderful stories that you shared. If it's okay, I'm going to close up because we are, like I said, closing down the restaurant, and we're kind of, the night shift is coming in. But thank you, everybody, for everything you've shared, and I really appreciate your engagement in this. There's going to be more information coming our way about how we can help the Good Neighbor Project, and specifically resettling the new refugee family that we'll be sponsoring. And so I really hope that we will stay engaged in this topic, and I think there's going to be now an explosion of need for support for refugees to be resettled. We thought we were going to be supporting Afghan refugees, and very likely we'll have tens of thousands of Ukrainian refugees settling, I think even just in our area, I think I heard. And so lots more to come on this topic, and thank you, everybody. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you all.
Thank